Starting over now. I'd like to welcome everyone tonight to Baltimore County Fire Department's EMS Academy Training Series. Our speaker tonight is EMS Captain Len Stewart, who is the manager of fire communications for Baltimore County Fire Department. He oversees the communications division, and he has 24 years with Baltimore County Fire Department and over 30 years as a volunteer. He is working on his bachelor's to master's degree in public safety administration, but he's got a wide variety of skills within Baltimore County Fire Department itself, through the FRA, through the field, and through the communications. So without further ado, we have Captain Len Stewart. Welcome. You're mute. Unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. I appreciate you taking the time to attend this class this evening. If you don't mind, I'm just going to turn my video off. The only thing worse than hearing myself is seeing myself. But I will monitor the chat to see everyone else. For those of you that have had this class before, I do apologize. I wanted to make sure I had one more research cycle for those who didn't, to make sure I covered the material. This is somewhat interactive, and for anyone that knows me, I'm usually pretty apt at teaching with a live class. So I'm still trying to get, honestly, this Zoom process worked out to its fullest. Dr. Sagal is going to be monitoring the chat and monitoring your questions and hands up. So when we have that discussion session, he'll call on you and then we'll talk and then we'll move on from there. Tonight, we're going to be talking about fire communications. This is something that I don't know if there's anyone online from the Dispatch Center, but this is something for those of you that know Sal Rivatori that we talked about some years ago, probably about 2 or 3 years now, with the radio chatter. This was something near and dear in his heart. And we started talking about radio discipline and etiquette. So we decided to put that into a class. And for a number of different reasons, thanks to Dr. Sagal's thanks to Dr. Barinholtz, I started doing this with the Online Academy training series. Tonight, we're going to talk about briefly Baltimore County demographics. That's pretty important to prove the point in our size and why communication is so difficult. I will give you a 911 center overview. For those of you who have never been up to the 911 center, we'll talk about 911 call taking, fire dispatch, and police dispatch. We're going to specifically talk about how our fire responses become fire responses and how we decide what to send on certain incidents and what not to send. We're going to talk about challenges identified with radio communication. We're going to discuss the 5 C's of radio communication. We're going to discuss effective and ineffective communications. And then we're going to try to identify some contributory factors, and I'll give you a preview of what we've done to improve some things. I do want to start off with the discussion, if I may. And this is where I'm going to call on Dr. Sagal to monitor. We got 4 questions that I'd like to ask the group for those of you in here. And I noticed there was a couple, I believe there's 1 or 2 chief officers in the group. And I know many of you are riding front seat of attending the medics or ambos or riding the engines. So it should be a good conversation. First question I'd like to ask the group is, why do you think communications seem to always be a contributory factor in most AAR's line of duty deaths and injuries? For anyone who has read a line of duty death report, it's almost inevitable that within the first 5 contributory factors, communications is a problem. Anybody want to take a stab on why that's an issue? And Dr. Sagal, if you'll look for those hands up, I'm having a problem. I'm going to just jump out of here real quick to bring the Zoom attendance back up. No hands raised?
Not yet. We have thunder and silence. Oh, wait. Brian notes that dispatchers are tasked with too many things happening.
Okay. Is there anybody in this group that's familiar with the Captain Laird death in Frederick County? Please raise your hand and give me a little bit about what you know to that.
I don't think so.
Okay, fair enough. Well, we'll just roll right along with it. So one of the things
Karen
that,
notes that stress and adrenaline cause communication challenges.
fair enough.
I'll
Anybody
note
want to raise their hand and
my
unsilence
own
themselves
observation
and
for
talk?
communications, or when things get chaotic and lost, or people disappear from the scene or are not accounted for.
Right. All of those are very good things. I was kind of hoping we could have a little bit more conversation. I'm actually going to pick on somebody if I don't mind. Chief Rossi, I see you. Chris, I see you're in the room. If I could pick on you specifically throughout, I know you like to talk, so I'm wondering if you could give me some input as to why you think communications plays such a big part in the AAR's line of duty deaths and in injuries. He may not have a microphone. Okay. Well, we'll go this route. So a lot of times when we're communicating on the fire ground, uh, we have, as many people said in chats, whether it's adrenaline, we're all pumped up, especially on fire ground scenes. Everybody wants to talk. There's a lot to say and a lot to communicate. In the death of Captain Laird in Frederick County, which was, I believe, a little over a year ago, there were approximately anywhere between 20 to 30 some key ups where he tried to communicate or was attempting to communicate or was at least pressing his button on his radio and nothing went through. During that duration of time, multiple people were walking over those key ups. Obviously, because he did not communicate any sound through, multiple people walked over that communications. A lot of times somebody will give directions and that person will give directions. For example, if I tell you to go around the side Charlie and deploy a line to Division One and make an attack to the rear Bravo Charlie corner, and you just say direct, but then you go in and you make an attack on Division Two in the Alpha Bravo corner, clearly there wasn't a line of communication that was received, most importantly, and then relayed back so that the information was verified. So a lot of times we have that when it comes to line of duty deaths and after action reviews. Since we don't have a lot of communication, I would like some responses in the chat. How do you feel that Baltimore County in regards to radio discipline etiquette rate? And most importantly, why? Anybody want to take a stab at that one?
So quiet.
I think everybody's just signed on Dr. Sagal and went off to
All right.
watch TV. All right, well,
We
we'll
have
move
one
on.
note. Poor, especially with complexities of the P1.
Yes, well, it's going to be kind of hard to talk about that unless we actually have a conversation about it. But I agree, there's some challenges with P1. It's a new system. When we implemented P1 in November of 2024, we knew, regardless of what the system was going to be back in 2020 when it was talked about, we knew that whatever the system was going to be, it was going to be a challenge because we have never had a AVL typed based positive, if you will, recommending system. That is something that has been near and dear to my heart. Obviously, I'm the most vested in person when it comes to P1 in the department, good, bad, or indifferent. So I have talked to Dr. Sagal, and I will be doing a class specifically on P1 and Motorola in the spring. And I would like to work on maybe a hybrid version for the very reason that we can communicate a little bit better. But regardless of what you think about P1, I can tell you that much of the system we've had significant improvements. Now, regardless of your challenges with P1, I think it's fair to say that we have automated several significant factors when it comes to dispatching. One of the things that we can say that's pretty accurate now, and we did have some problems, is GPS location and transmission of your statuses, and we're going to talk a little bit about that throughout this lecture. So P1 as a whole has allowed us to do various different things. I know that there's still some wants and needs in the in the volunteer sector about how we dispatch, and that's being talked about as we speak. But we have improved a lot of the automation, or what they used to call post-it note dispatching, where a lot of the dispatchers had to remember based on their SOPs, rules and regulations, or their personal knowledge of who was short, who was late, who was getting out, who wasn't. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. We've made several improvements as far as correction P1 itself. The P25 radios, the Motorola radio system has made significant improvements. We are looking now moving into ABL. ABL functions with the radios and the portables themselves, so you can see yourself once you're outside the medic for safety related reasons. The actual Bluetooth communications inside a fire now or an ideal environment is significantly enhanced. For any of us that are old school like myself and Dr. Sagal and some of the older members of the group in the class, if you remember when we used to communicate on the fire ground, it was horrendous compared to what we have now. So there's been significant improvements. And then with that being said, is there anybody that has any suggestions of what we can do now moving forward in improving communications? And again, I apologize, I can't see.
One of the comments, Brian Schumer notes, people don't let others complete their messages without talking over them. And that, I agree, is a very interesting current issue.
Brian, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
And then Andrew notes, this fits in it, radio discipline.
So both of them are absolutely 100% correct. I do have audio at the end that we're actually going to listen to. And I think it's pretty important to hear. You know, we say it a lot, we talk about it a lot, but I want you all to hear specifically what the dispatchers are hearing on their end. And I think it'll help you appreciate more how we have to pay attention to this. So that's some great points. I brought this slide up for a number of different reasons. You know, I think the take-home message is here. You can look at the slide set itself, and you can see that the population in Baltimore County is a little over 847,000 people. We are the third largest county in the state, third to Montgomery County, PG County, and we house 336,000 housing units. So the reason I bring this up is because if you think about our size and you think about our department, it's pretty self-explanatory that our call volume is going to be significant. And I think that everybody can attest in this group that people now, for the most part, call 911 and the non-emergency line as an information / end-all be-all. If I need something, I'm going to call 911, and they're pretty much going to be able to give it to me in most scenarios. We've done a significant amount in the fire service to reduce fires, but we're still working on reducing those EMS calls. So again, I bring this up because we are the third largest county in the state, and our call volume is significant for that reason. Has there anybody in this group been up to the 911 center? Have anything they would like to share about the center itself?
I'll add on to the messages that have been coming up. Again, radio discipline. Brian notes, enforce the use of phone button status changes. Get people off the air as much as possible. I couldn't agree more with that. Radios are for messages. Phones are for conversations. Again, accurate. Use of the MDCs. While responding to some of the smaller talk, it can be eliminated, i.e. unit status.
Yeah, and I think if there's anything that you all get out of this class tonight is, regardless of what you think about Motorola P1 itself, I think the biggest thing that you get out of this class tonight, if we start using those status buttons on the actual portable and on the actual tablet, I think we're gonna go a long way in eliminating some chatter. But we're definitely going to talk about that. And as I said, I have a slide that not only listens to visuals, but it listens to both two TAC talk groups. So I think you'll find that interesting. So if no one has been up, if there's anybody that's been up to the 911 center, you know that it's the 911 center is a new center in the sense that um, it's been redone in the last 12 years, I believe. So in the scheme of 911 centers, it is past its life expectancy, believe it or not. Most centers update their CADs every 5 years, and most centers 10 to 15 years update the actual infrastructure within the center for various different reasons. The technology, the computer needs, the server needs, the desks, all that is regulated and required by law to meet certain criteria. We have two 911 centers in Baltimore County. We have the primary center, and then we have the backup center. Now, if any one of you know where those centers are, that's great. We don't really talk about it because that is considered a critical infrastructure. So we don't acknowledge where the center is willingly. One's in Towson and one's in Cockeysville. There are two lines for the 911 call takers. There's the actual 911 line, and then there's a non-emergency line. When you call Baltimore County via 911 or non-emergency, you will get the same dispatchers. There's not a group of dispatchers that take non-emergency calls and a group that takes 911 calls. They alternate whatever's in the queue in priority, and a 911 call will always trump a non-emergency line. The 911 center in its operation is all civilian staffed. They have anywhere between 35 to 40 personnel per shift. They have 4 shifts working 12-hour shifts, and they work what's called a pitman schedule. So their schedule is 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off, 2 days on, 3 days off. And that's every 17 weeks they work nights, and every 17 weeks they work days, alternate shifts. Correction, 2 shifts work day for 17, 7 to 7 shifts, 2 shifts work night, 7 to 7 to 7A, and then they switch 17 weeks later. They dispatch a total of 8,500 calls a year. Last year, this was their calls last year. Now, I want to bring to your attention the number of police calls. And the last class we had, this brought up a lot of good conversation. We'll see how that goes this year. There's been a lot of discussion, concern, frustration, if you will, about police being dispatched to calls and then asking if they're needed. And I want to bring these numbers up when we start talking about that. Does anybody want to take a guess on why the police are so task saturated nowadays? I'm trying to bring the chat up myself.
I'm going to suspect most of the calls aren't emergency.
Well, that's true. Let me bring that slide set. Everybody can see my slide. So if you look at this, if you look at these calls, this 851,000 calls per year, last year alone, the Baltimore County Police Department handled almost 700,000 of them. So on average, we handle anywhere between 400 to 800 calls a day in the fire department, fire and EMS. And on average, the police handle anywhere from 1,500 to 1,800 calls a day. So keep that in mind when we start talking about how the precincts are broken down and how the dispatchers are broken down. Most of their calls are not emergency, but just like with ours, they have the same percentage of non-emergency calls or low-level calls as we do, giving their call volume total. That makes sense. This is always a lot of things. This is always a lot that people don't normally understand. The Baltimore County 911 Center, most 911 centers are regulated by FCC and NFPA and state, obviously, state and local laws on how they operate. For a center to be now, our 911 center is not accredited. However, they meet most, if not all, of the NFPA. Well, they meet all of the NFPA standards, but they are not accredited in simply that they don't have instructors that teach Pro QA up at the 911 center. for anybody that's ever heard of ProQA, Dr. Clausen, we started ProQA back in, I'll say, in the mid 1980s, 90s. We have emergency fire dispatch, emergency police dispatch, and emergency medical dispatch. And this is a requirement per the center. It is for anybody that's familiar with it, it is a set of cards. Now, obviously, if you look at this middle picture, this is what they used to have back in the day. They used to have to go through a flip card um, guide. Now this is all electronic and on the computer, so they read through these questions one at a time. But everything they do is based on these, which are basically we have our Maryland medical protocols. They have their protocols, which is the ProQA. So when you call in and say that you're having chest pains, for example, you'll go to the card 26. If you have a fire alarm going off, you'll go to the card 53. And they'll go through these card sets and they will read certain questions and instructions off to you. At any point in time, if they hit what they call a critical send, that call will get automatically dispatched. So for example, if you call and say, hey, my house is on fire, obviously you said my house is on fire. Before they get into the questioning, they will verify the caller's information, i.e. their name, the phone number in which they're calling from, and they will verify the address. Once that's verified, obviously, if I've called in and I said my house is on fire, they'll go right to the card 69, or now the structure fire card set. They'll reconfirm that you did say the house was on fire, and that's an automatic send. And we'll talk about that a little bit in a minute. It's important to note that in every card set, police, fire, and EMS, they have what's called determinants. They have the Omega all the way up to the Echo. Omega being calls that in the system, ProQA says you don't have to dispatch anybody to. You can defer that to, for example, animal control. You can defer to the health department. You can defer this to that. We don't have a process that's set up fully like that. There are some processes already set up, but not all processes. So for example, for us in the fire service, we got a lot of calls where you go out on the medic and you say to yourself, why in God's name was I dispatched to someone that had a pimple, a boil, something to that effect? If you can think of any one of those calls you've had throughout the years medically where you're like, I can't believe I went out for that, most likely that was an Omega level call that they've lumped into an Alpha or a 6 subject. From Omega, we go Alpha, which is non-emergent, non-urgent, and BLS. We go to Bravo, which is emergent first responder if needed, non-emergent, or BLS. And then we have Charlie, which is ALS and urgent. We have Delta, which is life-threatening and emergent. And then we have Echo, which is life-threatening, emergent. Do I have any questions with any of that on how that works? Any questions on ProQA? Let me look in the chat. No hands up. The other thing I would note is that in every set of instructions, if you will, the fire department and the police department determine their response. So they give us what they call an incident response factor. We look at that incident response factor, and if it calls for police, fire, and EMS, then we determine what units are going to respond on that incident. Fire dispatch is set up just as you see it on the screen. And I bring this up, I'm going to bring this up just to keep you familiar with how things work. The fire dispatch layout, they have 7 to 8 dedicated staff. They have a fire dispatch supervisor on every shift, and they have assistant supervisor on every shift. If everybody can see my pointer, You have FDO1 at the bottom and FDO6 at the bottom right. You see FDO7 on the left, bottom left. That is a spare position. That position is currently not filled. The 911 center is working on potentially filling that spot again. But FDO1 and FDO6 is your main dispatchers. So when you hear one voice and or two voices on the radio, you are hearing those two dispatchers. Main 1 will dispatch out a call, and if it's not terribly busy, FDO6, while Main 1 is dispatching out the call, will bring up the next call, review that call to see if mutual aid is required. If mutual aid is required, they will start to make those phone calls. They will bring up that recommendation, and they will work with the other dispatchers to see what units are available. This was in the past. The nice thing about Motorola Pro QA is the system automatically and instantaneously brings up units availability. FDO2 through FDO4 are your divisional dispatchers. You have FDO2, which is always your central dispatcher, FDO3, which is always your east dispatcher, and FDO4, which is always your west dispatcher. Even though those talk groups are always the same as far as the divisionals, you will always hear a different voice on the radio from shift to shift or day to day, and that's because they rotate each talk group daily to make sure they're proficient in each divisional and or TAC operations or main dispatch. FDO5 is your divisional dispatch, your tactical dispatcher or your break dispatcher. So for example, if FDO3 goes to lunch, FDO5 dispatcher will pick up east and monitor east. When east comes back, west will go, FDO5 will pick up west. And as long as nobody's on lunch, if we have a fire rescue box, a rescue box, or something to that effect that requires a divisional or tactical dispatcher, that will be your FDO5. Now, here's the point I want to make in this, and this is important for everybody to understand. I think it's fair that everybody in this group knows that there are days when dispatch sounds like they're in disarray. And I know we had a chief officer in this group, and I didn't want to pick on him, and I know he's obviously having some audio sounds, but if you're riding the front seat of an engine or you're a chief officer on a firebox, when you pull up, inevitably, if you're taking command, you would almost never take command and then go inside with an attack line and fight the fire at the same time. So if we put that same concept in the play with the 911 center, you have your FDO7 your fire dispatch supervisor is the incident commander, if you will, the center. And they are watching and listening and assisting every dispatcher within the center. However, I'll give you an example. FDO2 goes to lunch. FDO5 picks up the central talk group. At the same time, we get a firebox. Now FDO6, who's normally helping FDO1, is now going to take that divisional. If we, for whatever reason, get another firebox and they don't have someone within the center that's trained in fire, then the fire dispatch supervisor now either has to take a divisional talk group, or they'll take over that firebox. So if you can appreciate this, when the dispatch center has a supervisor that's basically your incident commander, and they're now on a divisional, it's kind of hard to oversee the center as a whole as far as fire dispatch. Most of them do an outstanding job, don't get me wrong, but you can understand and appreciate how very easily they are now task saturated. Any questions with that? Comments, concerns? Hearing and seeing none. We'll move on. As far as the 911 center, as far as police dispatch have 13 to 14 dedicated dispatchers. They work quite differently than we do because they have 9 precincts, 12 precincts really, but they have 9 dispatchers. And each dispatcher, instead of basically monitoring a divisional, A police dispatcher will actually monitor a precinct. So when you come in and they do the same thing, they rotate so that they rotate through every different precinct each day, but they monitor every car within a precinct. They also have a police dispatcher. They also have an assistant supervisor, and they have one relief dispatcher. Excuse me. This is a pretty rudimentary, self-explanatory diagram how the 911 center works. Someone will call in or text in. 911 does accept 911 text now. So you can text if you're having an emergency. They will receive that, answer that, and handle that same way. It goes through the 911 center call takers. They will take that information on ProQA and they will send that to police, fire, and EMS, or police, fire, or EMS. And that gets dispatched out through fire dispatch or police dispatch.
A quick question.
Yes.
How is 911 text?
So good question. If you go into your phone and you put 911 as the send, and you type in 911 as a text, and then you type a message saying, I need help, this, that, and the other, it will go to the 911 center as a 911 text. And then I've never done it before, and I've only seen it done in the testing phases, but a dispatcher will answer it and respond to it the same as they would a call. It's a little bit.
And it goes to the correct county?
Yes, it does go to the correct county. Your phone line, if you have a landline and or cell phone, your phone will go to the county or the jurisdiction in which it's registered or designated, unless it's a cell phone, and then it will go to the closest tower in whatever jurisdiction you're texting and or calling from. So it's pretty nice, actually. They implemented this. 911 texting was a big thing, and for any of you that's read any of the mass casualty shootings and any center that has 911 texting, a lot of information is received and a lot of information is gained to be used in tactical decisions from people that text during those incidents. It's pretty fascinating if you actually look into it. So we'll talk about our fire responses. Does anybody have any questions up to this point? Anybody have any comments up to this point that they want to go over? Am I going too fast? Like I said, I'm a in-person kind of instructor, so I apologize. But if I'm going too fast or you have any questions, please let me know. No questions, comments, concerns to this point? Okay, moving on. So this slide set kind of gives you a little bit of, obviously, most of you know this information as far as our fire department's response. We have 25 career stations, 28 fire engines, 35 medics, 7 trucks, 8 specialized services. We have a lot more than that now. This slide set I need to update, so I do apologize. The volunteer stations, we have 28 volunteer stations, 38 fire engines, 5 trucks, 8 squads. Again, I think that's the stats. I got to update them. 25 medics and 14 specialized service. It's important to note that with our call volume nowadays, we can't work without one another. The call volume is insane, even though we're only handling 300 to 500 calls a day. Our units run quite frequently. Our calls are dispatched incident specific. Going back to ProQA, we have medical calls only that are dispatched through EMD. We have fire calls only that are dispatched through fire. We have fire and medical calls that require a medic and a fire engine. And then we have medic, fire, and police calls. It's important to note every time that you call 911, if a call has any type of criminal and or police component, they will start through the EPD card set. So you always wonder why they get a police car first to a scene when it's an emergency or it's a call they want to come to. It's because they're going through EPD first. They get to jump on all calls, and if it's where they don't respond or can't respond emergently or urgently, or for that matter, they've got other higher priority calls of their own. They just doesn't respond. They don't respond. They do what they call holding in a queue, and that's a conversation probably for an in-person class. Um, we dispatch based on what we call an event type. So those of us in the group that are old enough to remember the old numbers, card 69 used to be a structure. So it used to be a 69 struck dwelling and a commercial building, the card 26 for chest pains, the card 25 for 6 subjects. Now everything is done through plain English. That's why you see the event type now as a struck fire com for commercial, or you have a chest pain. You might have a chest and then something, or you might have an unconscious or a UNC something. That's plain English. They're now called an incident response factor. They give us those incident response factors. We look at that and then we send our response to it. Currently, we do that through the response committee, where we meet as a group, a collective group of the volunteers, the chief officers, the captain's council, the union, the 911 center, the communications division, and we talk about what the chief wants on any given response, and we collectively talk as a group to, yes, we can do that, no, we shouldn't do that, or we ask for certain things, the chief will approve them, and then we send them over to the 911 to be added in or changed. We dispatched obviously to an address. That address is broken down into fireboxes, and our running assignment currently is based on our station orders. So in old CAD Legacy, and in new CAD, our priority is based on our stations. So you get the closest units from the closest stations. I'm sure many of you are thinking, when and are we doing or using ABL? And the question to that is, yes, we are utilizing ABL to not a primary use, but a secondary use, and is no obvious definitive policy that that's the end all be all right now. We have gotten a significant amount of stability in the system. Our units now are reading very, very consistently with GPS. And I did make a recommendation to the chiefs that if they are ready, we can move towards that process and look at that process more fully. So the medics, for example, if a dispatcher, and the dispatchers have gotten much better with it, obviously, if a dispatcher needs a closer unit, they'll bring that recommendation up in queue, and then they may look for that unit on the map and see if that unit's closer and then dispatch them. Any questions with that? I know the last class we had a lot of discussion on ABL use. Hearing
So
none.
basically,
Moving on.
dispatch knows all equipment is, or just the
Yes.
medics and the police?
It is. So the key to that, Dr. Sagal, is that as long as your unit and your mobile unit, your MDT, shows a green ABL symbol, the green GPS ABL symbol, you are being seen, and you can be identified by CAD. Now, if your GPS is not on, or if it's red, then obviously they cannot see you and or utilize you. But we've gotten a pretty good amount of stability with that moving forward. Any other questions, comments, concerns in the group? What time is it, Dr. Sagal? Let me look at the time. Okay, we're chugging right along. All right. So now we're going to get into some radio discipline, some of the things that we can do better on the radio. We talk about the 5 C's of radio communication. When you're talking, is there anybody in this group that wants to volunteer to give their opinion on how they think they do on the radio? Let me pick on somebody. Jim, are you Jim Clements? Are you able to unmic and talk to me? It's been a while since I talked to you, sir. Nope. Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Jim. How are you, sir? Can I pick on you
Okay.
for a minute?
Sure. Can I
Jim and
tell
I,
you what?
Jim and I,
I think we all do.
say again?
Can I, something I think we all done?
Yes. So Jim and I, for those of you, Jim and I go way back. I have a lot of respect for Jim. Jim taught me a lot of what I know in EMS and was one of my original preceptors. So if I may, Jim, I'm going to pick on you. When we talk about radio etiquette, and I know you've been around for a while as well, how do you think we do in Baltimore County as a whole as far as radio etiquette?
I would say generally pretty good. We're not as talky as the police are on their channels. We do try to be.
Oh, you think we're not as talking? Could you repeat, please?
I think
Must have
we
lost
don't talk a lot
it. Okay,
to
good.
dispatch as much as we hear being back and forth with police calls when we listen to them sometimes.
So do you think we could talk a little bit less?
No, I think I think we're fairly terse.
Okay. Is there anybody with it? Was there anybody in the group that would say we could talk a little less? That wants to unmute and talk. Maybe I'll pick on somebody else. Thanks, Jim. I appreciate you, sir.
I personally like to use the little MDCs that just push the buttons and not have to talk at all.
Yeah. So if anybody's listening, if I could get a show of hands, how many people think we could do more of that? What's your thoughts? I think it's important to understand. Thank you all. I appreciate that. We could definitely do a lot more of that. And I want to tell you, let's go through this slide and we'll talk about that a little bit in depth. So for anybody that's been through any type of radio communication class, there's the 5 C's of communication. It's concisiveness, be brief, say only what you need to say and what you want to communicate. Be very clear in your message. Understand what you're going to say before you say it. Have a thought process when you say it, and be clear about saying it. And then have confidence. This is one thing that I used to struggle with when I started, obviously. I struggle with sometimes when I'm back out on the unit, and as you can hear me in class, sometimes forming your words and teaching and depending on the responses you get and the feedback you're getting, it plays into your confidence. The one thing that I'll tell you for anybody that does anything with the newer groups, the newer kids, the newer members on the medic, it's very important to practice on that radio. And Dr. Sagal, you're a physician, you know this firsthand. When you're on the radio and you're giving medications and you're taking care of patients, you have to know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, you can mumble through it. But it's pretty hard to get instructions, directions, or orders from a physician if you sound like a bumbling idiot. Or more importantly, you don't know what you're asking for. Would you agree, Dr. Sagal?
Sometimes I would love to like that afternoon play the tape back to the person who gave the consult after they arrived, but we don't do that. But that would
Well,
be
and you bring up a great point. So, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, go ahead.
no, go for it.
You bring up a great point. There's going to be a new SOP that comes out on audio requests. I would strongly encourage anyone that's working with newer providers, and for that matter, it doesn't even matter if you're on the medic or the engine. If you're about to get cut loose as an officer on the engine, if you're about about to get cut loose as an attendant on the medic, or get cleared as an EMT, or get cleared as a medic, I would ask and encourage you to request audio to play back, as Dr. Sagal said, to your members. Have them do a practice consult. You can do it on the talk around channels. You can call up the ADO and pick a TAC channel that's not in use. You can have somebody, if Dr. Sagal, you would be great if you're hanging around the station one night and you want to have somebody call you and ask for orders and give orders on a patient, and we can pull that audio for you, and you can let that person listen to it. We have a lot of officers in the fire department now that have taken advantage of being able to get the audio. And when an officer's getting ready to get cut loose as a lieutenant or a captain in the front seat, if they run their first fireground, for example, they run incident command, they've been pulling the audio and letting them listen back to it. And it makes a big difference as far as your competence level in talking on that radio. You want to make sure that you're in control. I think a couple of you said it already in the very beginning slide sets, that our adrenaline's pumping, we get all excited, and we're not in control. Now, we're doing well on time, so we'll take a little break in about 5 minutes. And I have two tactical talk groups that I'm going to let you hear the difference in the firebox. And then, of course, the last C is capability. Like I said, make sure that you're practicing, make sure that you're speaking, make sure you're taking advantage of that in your skill set. One of the things, and I picked on Jim before, one of the things that Jim did with me back in the day is he practiced with me on the radio. And that was critical because I did not really understand and appreciate how significant that would be going through my career, having somebody make me use the radio before I even got out on the street. And I did that, and I do that. I don't do it anymore, but I did that with members of the company as well as I moved up in the volunteers and career and so forth and such. So, given our attentiveness right now, I'll go through this. One of the things within effective communication is you can almost guarantee that it will be noted in a line of duty death. If you're not communicating properly, i.e., I'm giving you a message, you've received it, and then I made sure I received it because I told you exactly what you told me, there is countless number of scenarios where the communication is just completely ineffective. And almost always in a line of duty death, somebody's told something, they're given an objective or a tactic, they either agree, acknowledge it, but they don't repeat it back, and then they go off and do whatever without relaying that information back, or they misunderstood or misinterpreted what they were told, and they do something else. And then when things go south, we have clear communication recordings and timestamps of that process failing. So that's almost always noted in a line of duty death. Effective and ineffective communication means a lack of unit response. Sadly, good, bad, or indifferent, we've had 3 calls that we've had units not respond on because we had a lack of communication and we had a dispatcher wasn't paying attention to status monitors and ADOs not paying attention to status monitors. So we were a little delayed in getting units to calls. And that in and of itself is lack of unit response, but ineffective communication, whether it be verbal or whether it be status changes, it's significant. And I just talked about significant problems with misinterpretation of tactics and objectives. And then, of course, stress and fatigue. All right, so let's do this for a minute. I've got 3 more slides. We've got some audio to listen to. I think now would be a good time to take a break. We'll take a break, if you will, until 8 o'clock. We'll listen to about 15, 20. We got a couple more slides and and some audio, and then we'll get out of here. Sound good, Dr. Sagel?
Yeah, that would be fine.
All right, so everybody will get back online at 8 o'clock. Thank you, sir. I know I'm a couple minutes early. We'll go ahead and get started again so we can get out of here. Let's go through some of the contributing factors of poor communication or effective communications. There are seven key components to effective or ineffective communication. That's obviously the infrastructure. I can tell you all very comfortably in Baltimore County, we have a very robust and a very secure infrastructure when it comes to our communications. About 2 years ago, 3 years ago, give or take, they started upgrading and updating towers, adding towers, and enhancing towers within Baltimore County. We have a significant number of towers. The exact number we don't give out, the locations we don't give out, obviously. With that being said, there are still areas within the county that we have problems communicating. So picture yourself up north. If you know you have some spots where you're down in a valley or up on a hill where sometimes you don't receive those communications. And the easiest way to say this is if the county can find a place that needs a tower to place the tower, they generally do what they have to do to acquire and obtain the money to make that happen. But if most of your area is rural and somebody doesn't want a tower on their property, they won't let you put a tower on the property. So we still work on those challenges with any jurisdiction, specifically within Baltimore County. So if we can ever come up with a fix for that, we'll get most of our spots in Baltimore County honed in. Training or lack of training is significant. I can tell you that Chief Hughes on Bravo shift has been rolling out with all the other deputy chiefs and working on rolling out the new EAB communication training. Trainer who has been given that training, but we have been able to isolate a channel, which is Oscar 11, where we have three of we call them the Mayday radios back in the day, but we have the three Mayday radios. So we were able to isolate that channel and those radios so that our crews could actually go out and activate a true emergency button and work through ruthless preemption and how the radios work and how the talk groups work and how you can bump and how you get priority to the channels. And then they're also working on how to use the radio and change through the channels and zones as you're talking. Is there anybody in this group that have taken that class recently that can give us some input on how that is, how that's went? I know we've got some career people in here. Has anybody taken that training recently that could comment on that for me? No one. Okay. So 5 other factors and contributory factors as far as communication is your ability to use the radio, your knowledge of the role, what channels you're using, how you're using them, your competence in your role, how familiar you are with equipment. It is important to go out and use these radios. Our radios are very nice in that they go right to left, down the channel, up and down a zone, and they go from A all the way down to UU or BV, I believe, as far as the zones. And now we have the Bluetooth capability with the packs, which has been significant. Now, for anybody wondering, that's not Matt Hill. So that's just a chief officer picture I grabbed. But so I used that picture and was like, oh, that's Matt. But it is not. So proper use of the radio. You want to confirm your message. Make sure the message that you communicate in your head is what you want. You want to verify and confirm any information that you need to confirm. you want to place the radio 1 to 2 inches from your mouth, i.e. the mic or the lapel mic, the radio, 1 to 2 inches from your mouth, directly in front of your mouth, and then relay your message. It is important that when you relay your message, depending on the severity of the message, the criticalness of the message, it's relayed back to you so that there's that closed loop communication. Deliver the message in a normal voice. No slang, no profanity, no jargon. If anyone has heard Chief Hughes on the radio, which I'm sure most of you in this group have, he is very deliberate in how he communicates on the radio. He does that with a purpose. He does that so he's slow and methodical and to the point with his message. Not to say that he's the best as far as communication or everybody should do it like him. I just use him as an example because I have some audio that you can hear as well. And then critical. So we have 5 components in message delivery. And if I'm going too fast, if people are writing this down, let me know. You want to form the message. The message consists of who do I need to address? Who am I talking to that can address the problem? Who does not need to communicate in the moment? And that's key when we listen to some of our divisional talk group. You want to prioritize the delivery. What do I need to say and what needs to be requested? That's it. No more, no less. And then what can I eliminate? Obviously, practice will get rid of ums, ahs, pauses, slang, jargon, and that's key. Then you want to deliver the message. Be direct and to the point. Use a normal voice. Pay attention to inflection of pitch, tone, volume, your pace, modulation, and say what you need to say. Hopefully, you want to verify the message. Was the message repeated back to me? And if not, do I need to make sure whoever I sent it to receives it by asking for clarification and a repeat back? Is the message request being answered and or completed? If somebody's not answering me in the background, then I know they're not listening. And then I want to correct any discrepancies in delivery before the message is complete. The last stress point before we listen to some audio is please take every opportunity to practice. Take every opportunity to deliver a technique. Educate yourself on your radios. There will be some more training. One of the things that I talked to Dr. Sagal about coming up in the spring, and I would very much like to work with him on going back in class and also having an online version so we have participation with the monitors and the mobiles, and then we can still have the online version for those of you to get credit. But I think it's going to be important moving forward with the Motorola training is to do some hands-on stuff. So I'm going to work on that, and I'm going to work on working with Chief Hughes and whatever training he's given out to do a similar version of that with the EMS Academy training series. Dr. Sagal, can you still hear me? Because I'm getting a message that my Wi-Fi is a little unstable right now.
Yes. Everything
Perfect.
seems to be okay at the moment.
All right. So I'm going to rely on you, sir, if I can. This is going to be a little challenging if everybody doesn't participate, but we'll see how it goes. We're going to listen to, let me check my time. We're doing really good on time, so we're going to listen to, give or take, about 10-ish minutes of audio. Now, I'm going to monitor the chat. I'm going to watch for hands, but it's going to be really important for this to be effective that you listen. And what I would like is for people to suggest what is good and what is bad about the audio that they're hearing. This is divisional. This is 1 hour worth of audio. It's from 1700 to 1800 on a weekday. And I put this up here. This is what I see when I pull audio. And I put this up here because this is significant. I want you to understand that every one of these blue lines is a key up. Now, the thicker the line doesn't mean that that's a key up. That's it could be a key up that's a longer audio transmission, or it could be several instantaneous key ups back to back to back to back that's formed into one. The reason I show you this is because on this particular night, between the hours of 1700 and 1800, there were over 500 plus transmissions. And if you look in this time span, you can see that between 5 o'clock and between 5:30, there was almost half of that. So imagine, if you will, when we start to listen to this audio, how problematic that can be. Now, I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I could have condensed this down to make it a shorter period of time, but you wouldn't get the true effect of the actual audio overall. So I'm going to let you listen to it. We'll talk about it. If we don't get any talk or discussion, then we'll move on. But I want you to pay attention to make suggestions as to what we could do better and what was done good. And if you pick up on some points that I note, and then we'll move on from there. All right, so I'm going to let you listen starting now.
Ammo 505. Ammo 505. You're going to box area 39-22, 11509 McCormick Road to Brightview, Varsity International Circle, for a fall. You have utility 397 on scene. You know, 6 rounds. EMS 6, have you route?
Arrived.
Medic 116, have your arrived. 705 en route. Have you en route, 1703. From engine 10, when you arrive, can you bring another cylinder with you, please?
I'm direct. You also need us to bring the reef.
Have some stretcher as close as you can to the door. Paramedic 5 is en route. Medic 5, have you en route? 17 arrived. Hey, Tower, grab me a lane. Have you arrived? Ammo 16 in a row. Ammo 16 in route, 17
in route.
Medic 9, 1703. Engine 8 in route. Engine 8, 1704. Ammo 1 in route. Ammo 1, 1704. 6 dispatchers, 9's my ALS, put them in service, all 3. Correct, Medic 9.
Clearing station.
Session back here. You can add me to that box. We're back to service. Okay, sir. Which box were you referring to? Medical box. Correct. EMS 16. I will 16 clip. $17.04.
Medic 101's clear. Can you place this unit returning out of service?
Clear and out of service, 17.05. Engine 14's around 30 blocks. Engine 14 around 17.05. Dispatch 17, was anybody else around? You have ammo 455 en route. Engine 391 failed to get out. Engine 503 failed to get out. Five oh three is en route with 3. 306 en route. Dispatch Unit 306, I have you en route, 17.05. $455's arrived. Ammo 455 arrived, 17.05. Dispatch Medic 55, we're pretty close to that 10 box at Medic 9. I don't know what their location is, but we're in an 8 box right now. Medic 9 was cleared. I have that covered. Thank you. Receive. Dispatch from 503, did you get us en route with 3? Okay, I'll put you en route short, 1706. Engine 17, you have 503 short with 3. Make it clear. Okay, 503, have you clear? Thank you, 17. 503 is clear. $17.06. $0.47. Tower 17 driver from Tower 17, can you grab the cutters and bring them up here? Truck one's on 2, fine. Truck 1, have you responding? 1709. Medic 11.
Medic 11 en route.
Have you en route. Associate 306, have you arrived? Truck 1, Medic 11, 72-year-old male, conscious and breathing, having chest tightness on the left side and is weak.
That's 7 en route.
EMS 7.
Can you switch calls with Medic 5, Medic 11, and then put Medic 11 with us?
Okay, correct. Medic 11.
Okay, for the sake of time, I'm going to stop the audio there. I noticed there's some responses in the chat. I appreciate those of you that put it in there. I have Karen Kennedy, concise, short responses. Ma'am, did you mean that there were some good short responses in there? If you wouldn't mind, would you mind unmuting yourself and kind of explain some of your responses? I would appreciate that.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can. Thank you.
Hi. I think a combination of that and then not. I think as soon as I wrote that, there was one, I was like, oh, well, that wasn't so much. But I think intermittently it was concise and short. So it was mostly a positive reflection.
Good. Thank you for that. You are correct. Yep. Excellent. I appreciate that. So the thing that I wanted to bring up to the group as a whole is if you start to listen to this, and I believe this is said by Brian and Dr. Sagal and a couple of us, it's very easy for us to blame Motorola now for a lot of things. But the truth is a lot of this is just bad habits that we've done for a very, very long time, with myself included. And we really just got to change the culture. I think it's fair to say if anybody really paid attention to that audio, probably 2/3 of the little bit of audio that I let you listen to. And for the sake of time, there was one very, very, very intense 3-minute exchange with the dispatchers and the field units because everybody was just stepping on everybody else and a lot of people were talking. And I think if you hear that audio and you're honest with yourselves and we're honest with ourselves as a group, we could have probably eliminated at least half or a third of that audio right off the bat without any issues whatsoever. A lot of that audio, if you heard, were people what we call walking over one another. It's important to understand, and again, taking the responsibility. I take some responsibility and obvious to this because we haven't put out enough information to give you the necessary knowledge that you need to how to effectively use P1. Some of it is a little we have put out and you haven't taken the time to practice and or read it. And then some of it is we just got to change the culture. So if we want to fix this, we as a collective group got to understand what our problems are and address them. And it's really important before you key up or when you key up to wait a second or two before you talk. Now, if we're out on the same talk group together and somebody keys up and then I key up at the same time, one of us is going to get bumped. So it's to us, we think we're fine. But it's important to note for the dispatcher, they can hear everything. When you key up, as long as somebody else can get through, they're going to hear them as well. So what we don't understand and what we can't appreciate is a lot of times things sound great for us, but the dispatcher is getting completely inundated. And as you heard in the very first couple minutes of that audio, that's exactly what was happening. I want to stress a couple things. And when I did this EMS in service with our medic crews, we had a lot of very candid conversation, which was great. We're not going to get that same candid conversation here, and that's fine because I think as long as we get the point across, I think we've achieved the objective. But we have the ability, as long as you are using your mobile and your green GPS box is on, your transmissions are going through. The 911 center only asks that we communicate in route and clear. Now, I've been arguing since I've been in my role for a very, very long time that even in route is unnecessary to a certain extent. I'd love to have any debate with anybody that wants to talk about that, but their only concern is that we have a unit going to the call and that we close the call out saying somebody's handled it. So that's why they want in route, and that's why they want clear. I've had fire officers argue the point where I want my units to call arrived because I want to know that they've arrived. And the plain and simple fact is you don't have to call any status because all you have to do is press the button. So think about how much audio that we've gotten rid of if we just use our status buttons on the radio or on the MDT. And there was a communication brief sent out quite some time ago. I can certainly send out another one. You now have the ability to change your status on the radio itself. So if you go into the soft buttons, you go to STS for status, you can scroll up and down and you can put yourself en route, arrived at the hospital, at the patient, all at your radio. So we've done a lot of things to give you the ability to communicate less. The other thing that we can't seem, for whatever reason, to get out of the habit of is, one, the dispatchers telling us everything about the call. Grandma was sick. She hasn't eaten for 3 days. She hasn't this. She hasn't that. The call you're getting dispatched for is chest pain, shortness of breath, and you can respond. Everything else is in the notes. One thing that we can tell you very clearly with P1 is now you get instantaneous remarks. So the 911 call taker could literally be on the radio still with the caller, putting comments in as the police dispatcher is entering their comments and the fire dispatcher is entering their comments. There should be no reason nowadays why we're asking for updated information if our MDTs are working, because all we got to do is read them in the comments sections. If you're asking for updates because you haven't read the MDT, that's unnecessary chatter on the radio. They're seeing, because everything now is real time. It used to be in CAD Legacy, where if I was the 911 call taker, I'd put a message in, and then I would have to acknowledge it and read it and send it over. You guys wouldn't see any of that unless I sent it to you in the MDT. In P1, we've allowed you to see everything real time. We can even, if the dispatcher feels it's a priority, mark it as a priority message, and now you see it real time in red. So it's real important that we pay attention to our comments, because that's now real time. Any questions, comments, or concerns with that?
We're on 83 southbound, enter
All right.
39.
So I'm going to let you listen very briefly to this, and I want you to hear this talk group, how smooth it started off, and then we're going to do a couple more slides and we'll close. We'll be out of here in about 10 minutes.
Engine 2, they're turn out. Engine 202, 1558.
Dispatch from Deputy Chief. You can have me to the 55 box. I'm en route.
PCC on direct, 1559. Okay, it's right route. IC3, have your route, 1559.
12 route.
Engine 12, 1559.
Engine 16's en route.
Joel, 1 out.
Engine 16, 1559.
Engine 55 route.
Engine 201, I have you en route. Engine 55, I have you en route. Truck 1, I have you en route.
Truck 1's en route.
Truck 8's en route. Engine 55 from Deputy Chief 2.
Dispatch, Engine 55.
Go ahead, Engine 55.
.360 is complete. Heavy smoke conditions on the first floor. We do have an active basement fire stretching a 2.5 to the basement at this time. Go ahead and set me up as command. Like I said, 360 complete. Confirm a basement fire.
Direct. And Deputy Chief T was trying to raise you, engine 55.
Copy that. Go ahead, Chief.
I'm actually pulling up. I just drove around. I saw where you're at. I'm going to go ahead and set up command on the side Alpha.
Engine 2 there, turn out. Engine 2 there.
So I have this audio on here, and again, it's much easier when we're in face to face talking about this a little bit. But I want, and I'm not specifically pinpointing this one particular chief because we have several chiefs that do an excellent job in communicating on the fire ground. But if we would have more time, we would listen to the other one, and you'd see a clear difference in the communication and the conciseness of the communication, delivery of the message, and the receiving of the message. This particular chief is very methodical, very intent on making sure his units and our crews talk effectively on the radio, and you can hear that difference. I think if I told you guys this was all at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you probably wouldn't believe me because it sounds like everybody just woke up and they're rolling out the door and they're wiping their eyes as they're talking. And this is 4 o'clock-ish in the afternoon and they have a basement fire. Not one person got excited. Not one person raised their voice. Their messages were clear, concise, to the point, direct, and with the exception of that little hiccup in the middle, that delivery was huge and almost on point. And again, practice, training, and time. Any questions with that, comments with that? We usually have a lot more, but again, we'll roll on for time's sake. All right, so a couple of things that I want to just go over as far as some of the enhancements that we made. The agree to disagree, the Chiefs have went to a cab model of command. I don't think there's many situations now where you see them outside of the unit when they're talking on the radio. And regardless of your personal opinion, this has been proven effective throughout the nation. And quite honestly, I think it's fair to say that if you're sitting inside that car and you're the incident commander, as long as you can see everything, this has enhanced our capability on the fire ground significantly. These chiefs now can hear what's being said. They can communicate what's being said. There's very little background noise. When they want to talk to you, they open the window and vice versa. And it's just a more controlled form of communication. There's a lot of discussion on it, good, bad, or indifferent. I happen to think it's amazing. When I listen to the audios, the difference between what they're doing in the front of the car versus out in the fire grounds, and it's made a difference. We've made significant enhancements in Baltimore County as far as OCS training. There's an officers training now that talks specifically and goes over communications. I am doing my best, and we are working on having classes both with the Fire Academy, with you guys on the EMS Academy training series. We're going to do more with actual radio training. We're going to do more with P1 training. We're going to have more classes like this where hopefully we can have some more in-depth conversation and listen to audio. The chief officers are doing after action reviews now more frequently than ever. We've had probably 6 significant after action reviews in the last year, 2 years, that are pretty, if you hadn't had a chance to partake in one of them or read them, you should really take a chance to look at them. I know Chief DeVito and the safety office got any copies that you want, can send them to you if you haven't seen them. The other thing that we do now monthly is we have what's called the SEER group, again, through the safety office. We have chief officers from both the police and fire department that can make immediate changes on the spot. We meet, we talk about certain calls, near misses, significant events. We talk about it both from a fire department perspective, a police department perspective, and a 911 perspective, and how we can improve the system and what we can do to make things better. Was it a lack in communication? Was it a lack of delivery of message? Was it that we need to go out and do more training with such? And that's made a significant improvement. One of the things that we did with P1 from the start was when you declare an emergency on the radio, we decided from day one that we wanted to share that emergency immediately with the police because P1 gave us that capability. So now, whenever you declare a signal 13 or emergency, every police car on GPS within a 2.5 mile radius receives that same activation. We've already had 4 signal 13s that were actual significant events that the police arrived before we dispatched out the signal 13 response. That's how close and that's how quickly they got there. So we're making significant improvements as far as that and your safety. As far as the technology, the radios are new life cycle radios that are coming out now with the new BN models. They've come forward with the latest and greatest software. They have the new remote speaker microphone lapel mics that are wrapped and double wrapped and all this protective coating and wiring for heat and or transmission of signals. We have the Bluetooth pairing of the MSA, which is huge. We have the attention tone that the chiefs are using. If they want to gain your attention on the fire ground, they no longer have to ask dispatch to sound an alert. They can sound an alert themselves on their radio and speak their message when they want, how they want, and as quickly as they want. We have the channel marker, which was something that the police have used for quite some time. When you hear a tone on the radio that goes boom, boom, that channel is restricted. I don't know how well we've gotten that message out. That's on me, so I've got to get that message out. When we call channel restricted now, we have a tone that sounds every 10 seconds on the radio. If you get on the radio to send any kind of message, if you wait a couple seconds and you hear that channel marker, that should tell you that unless your message is urgent or emergent, you should be going to another divisional talk group to talk and relay your message because something's going on in that channel and you need to clear that channel. That's something that we do. And then I already told you about the EAB training channels and the EAB activations. So we made significant improvement there. So in conclusion, we've reviewed Baltimore County demographics. We've described the 911 process in length. We've talked and identified ways that the fire department has responded and made things available and corrected and enhanced our process. And of course, we discussed how you can communicate better and more effectively. I appreciate your time. Does anybody have any questions for me, comments, concerns? Anybody want to put anything in the chats? I'd appreciate it. Short of that, have a wonderful night and thank you for your time.